think one of the questions that we always, we're as sellers, we're always, at least I'm curious to hear, it's, hey, like, what books did you read, right? Like, there's all this material out there, all these books that everyone recommends. Dave, you made it to the top. Like what have you read? Like, if someone was asking you today, like, what book should I read?
Yep. I have a top 3. So my, probably a better word for it, but I'll just say it because I'm authentic and I'm real, and it's one of the things we've loved about each other. So my Bible, if you will, was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I mean, for years, that was my Bible. I love that book from the 1930s and still is true, almost 100 years later as it was back then. So still a big fan of How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
That's like an oldie. You don't hear that as often anymore.
You don't, but again, the concepts in there, right? Of you can make more friends in I can quote almost that whole book off the top of my head, but you can win more friends in 2 months by being interested in other people than you will in 2 years trying to get them interested in you, right? And things like ask questions, don't make statements. I mean, all these principles that just work, and they're so true. Firmly planting yourself in someone else's shoes. All these concepts that are just so powerful. So I love How to Win Friends and Influence People. There's a book that came out a few years ago now that I have read front to back to front, which I'd never done before until I read that book. Literally, I started with the last chapter once and read it backwards. I'd opened up to random pages. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Chris Voss was a former FBI hostage negotiator. That is not just one of the best negotiation books, but truly one of the best communication books I've ever read. And there's so many skills. I'll spoil a little bit of it, but for those of you out there, highly recommend you read it. Or as we joke, as the kids do nowadays, if you listen to it on audio, that's fine too. But calibrated questions, mirrors, accusation audits, emotional anchors. They're just all these powerful communication tools. Phenomenal book.
So and then I have a question on that.
Yeah, sure.
The third one. So off the bat, you've got 2 books that almost are how-to guides, and they're fundamental. Like How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's just fundamental basics on how to treat another human being, right? How to act, compose yourself with conversations with anyone.
Yep.
Obviously, the applications here with business, and same with How to Win Friends, or same with Never Split the Difference. You're using that with customers, but let's say, like, you didn't just read it and you knew it. You had to apply these day in, day out. Like, what was that? You want to touch on, like, what was that like to, like, did you just say, come into the office the next day and you're like, I'm going to do this?
Well, a little bit, yes. But to your point, no, you have to practice. And Voss talks about that a lot, the author. Practice at the grocery store. Gosh, he has so many stories of even practicing when he's trying to get an upgraded seat at the airport. I practiced it at home with my wife and with my kids, right? Would you be opposed to having chicken quesadillas for dinner tonight, right? Using, no-oriented questions. Would it be a terrible idea if we watched Nobody tonight? Well, no, it wouldn't be a terrible idea, right? And all these principles, Xavier, I mentioned calibrated questions that start with what and how, which gives the other person the feeling of control. So to that point of practicing, I'll give you an example. It happens a lot in a client meeting where at the end of the meeting, the next steps are clear. And there are several ways we could do it. I could say, okay, let's say you're the customer, Xavier. All right, Xavier, here are next steps. We're going to do A, B, and C. How does that sound? Sounds great, Dave, right? Or to give the other person that feeling of control, Xavier, what do you see as our next step? How would you like to proceed? Xavier, I know we talked about, A, B, and C as priorities of yours. What would you like to see as the next step? Rank those for me. Which of these is most important? So to your point, yes, it's practicing all of those, practicing mirrors, mirror is just using the last 2 or 3 words that somebody used in their sentence. So I was actually talking to someone who told me they read the book, and he said, "Oh, I learned so much from that book." I said, "Learn so much?"
Pause.
Right, and the long pause, right, and oh yeah, the prince, and I just, I let him go, and I said, "I just mirrored you." So yes, practicing, and funny story. I mean, my kids use it. My 11-year-old daughter will say, would you be opposed to me staying up until 11 o'clock tonight, right? Would it be terrible if I stayed up until midnight tonight? Yes, that would be terrible. Okay,
Yeah.
can I at least stay up till 10? Okay, well, 10's okay, but not midnight. And, teach them while they're young.
Yeah, I remember when you used to pull that on me, and I'm like, and I'll tell you, like, don't manage me. I'm just venting here. I remember that. Yeah, I like the one. You're going to hate this. Like, well, like leading with hate, like, and then you tell them what happened. They're like, oh no, like not at all. Like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's an emotional anchor. Yeah, and
It's
it's honest too. It's not trying to sugarcoat something. And you say you're probably going to hate this, and there's a big difference, Xavier, as between that and I don't want you to think X, right? I don't want you to think that I don't care about you. That's a terrible way to say it. And actually, the emotional anchor, the better way to say it would be, you're going to think I don't care about you. Not,
right.
I don't want you to think, because already you're getting defensive, right? Oh, I don't want you to think. Xavier, you're going to think I don't care about you. We're changing your compensation plan. And you're like, you're honest with me. No, I don't think that you hate me. I get it, right? These things happen. Okay, walk me through it. What is this going to look like?
So what's the third one?
Always the hard part, because there are so many great ones. If I had to pick a third, which I clearly do, it's Relentless by Tim Grover. I found a lot of people don't know that book, and a lot of people don't know Tim Grover, who was Michael Jordan's personal trainer. That is such a powerful book about, at a high level, it's like there are levels of extremes of people, right? People who are good and then really good and then great. And then there's this level above great. And I'll use sports references, a few of them, but it's Michael Jordan, it's Larry Bird, it's Kobe, it's Tiger Woods. Their brains are just wired a different way. The only challenge with that book, full transparency, is I found a lot of people can't relate to it.
Right.
So again, and Xavier, me, I'm always going to be honest. I used to recommend that book to everybody, and then I got really selective, and I would recommend it to people who I knew could really get, people like you, right, who are relentless. Or I'd recommend it, like in your example, I might give a copy of that book to your new boss. And I'd say, you want to get into the brain of Xavier Rios, right? And you and I talked about this recently, of someone else close to you. I said, I'd like to give this person a copy of the book. Because this idea of relentless, just this, next level, extreme. Here's the quote from the book. Being relentless means demanding more of yourself than anyone could ever demand of you. It's craving the result so intensely that the work is irrelevant.
Powerful.
And a relentless person would never complain about the work or say they're too busy or make any excuses. They want that result so bad.
He opens
the work
up.
is totally irrelevant.
Right. He opens up the book with, like, this is not a guide. Right. He says that. He's like, this is not a how-to book. Like,
no.
It's clear after that. You're like, oh man, like, you imagine as a reader, you're like, oh, well, how do I get there? But he makes it clear he's witnessing. He's like, these are traits that people have within them.
Now,
That's
to be
interesting.
fair, even if you can't totally relate, anybody could read that book. You might not be at that level, because this is like the 0.00001% of people. But if you could be a little bit more like a Michael Jordan or a Kobe, or Larry Bird, or if you're a basketball fan out there, some people might laugh, but people who really know basketball, Charles Barkley absolutely was at that level, and there's some great stories about him. Dwayne Wade, great book. So great question. I love that about books that have really continued to make an impact on me.
I'm interested, or it's interesting. You had Relentless, but I thought you would have had. Honestly, I thought you would have had Extreme Ownership in your top 3.
I do love Extreme Ownership. That it's 3.5. I do believe that if you take full ownership of everything becomes easier.
Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't mean you do everything yourself. It could include delegating, but yes, extreme ownership is you take full ownership of everything. You don't make any excuses. Once you accept it's on me, it's up to me to get whatever it is done. But yes, that is a great book, and we'll probably talk about Jocko a little bit more later on.
Shout out to Jocko if he ever sees this podcast. Can't tell you how many lives he's impacted, careers he's launched, right? You hit it. That's your top 3. You guys heard it. That's it. Go read audiobooks are the cool thing these days. I think naturally, like, we talk about like great sellers, great athletes. I mean, people describe them. You've seen sellers come and go. I mean, you must have managed at this point hundreds of sellers.
Yeah.
Maybe close to 1,000. No, maybe. But you've had multiple teams, multiple people who excelled. What makes a seller great? Like is there a specific trait that you see? Earlier you said, okay, well, coachable.
Yeah.
Is that it? Is it? I mean, what if someone's like really coachable, but they can't apply it, or they just have the inability to apply it? What do you see as a trait, or maybe 2, of a great seller?
Yep, there are definitely a few. For sure, coachable. And to your point, with that comes follow through. So they might be listening, and they're not saying, I got it. I mean, they're all ears and they want to hear all about it. Xavier and I both help people with exercise and nutrition, and people constantly say, oh, can you write a meal plan for me? And they appear to be coachable, right? They're open to it, and okay, I understand these are my macros, and this is how many steps I need to take a day, and resistance training, I got it. But then you follow up with them 2 weeks later. Hey, how's it going? It was 200 grams of carbs and 200 grams of protein a day, right? Oh, man, I had family in town, and I ended up going out to eat a bunch, but yeah, so they were a little coachable in that they didn't say, oh, I know how to do it. They seemed to absorb the content, but they didn't follow through. So yes, of course, Xavier, there's coachable, following through on commitments. Great salespeople are great listeners. That's another one. And they're curious, right? The old Stephen Covey, seek first to understand, then to be understood, right? So somebody said, tell me about CDW. Xavier, I'd be happy to. Would you mind if I asked you a couple of questions first, just to get to understand you and your role and your goals and your initiatives and what you've been tasked with, so I can best, right, understand how we might be able to help you? Would that be okay if we started there, right? So it's being curious. Dave, tell me about your supplier diversity program at your organization. Absolutely, happy to do that. If you don't mind, would you mind telling me a little bit about, or you're obviously asking for a reason, it sounds like you have some goals around supplier diversity, or you've been tasked with a certain percentage of your business. Would you mind telling me a little bit about that? So it's being curious versus just jumping right in to, oh my gosh, they asked me to pitch my technology. This is it. This is what I've been, this is the whiteboard pitch I've been practicing. And
That's
the reality is
I've been guilty
do
of that one.
Yeah.
You did, we're not like, look, we're not, we've all got, it's interesting. I call it the whack-a-mole. I got better at that, but then the years go by and then I find myself with these old habits that moles back. And I'm like, I thought I fixed that. But I caught myself recently. Like I had a prospect tell me, hey, tell me this. And I immediately was like, it's about time. All right, let's jump in. And I'm like, and I like went back to that time when I had the whiteboard marker. I was like, I totally just did that. And sure enough, as we're going through it, I'm like, I should have asked questions.
Well, even to show whoever you're talking to, it doesn't just have to be a client, but to show that you were really listening too. So let's say best of intentions, you do go in. Xavier, would you mind telling me about what are the 3 biggest challenges you face in your role today? Oh, sure, Dave, it's A, B, and C. Okay, so I did good that I asked what your challenges were. But again, what I find most salespeople do is they say, oh, great, we can solve A with this, B with this, and C with that. And you know that you can, but just to slow down. So Xavier, would you mind sharing with me your 3 biggest challenges? Absolutely, Dave, it's A, B, and C. So using some of those, Chris Voss active listening techniques. So tell me a little bit more about this, or so it sounds like your challenges is this, this, and this, right? And you're going for, the magic words are, that's right. I met with a client recently who I knew going in had feelings that they weren't really being heard, and I got them to really open up and really just repeated back it sounds like you feel like we don't appreciate the business you're doing with us today, right? It sounds like, gosh, I hate to say the word, but it sounds like we're acting entitled to your business. And he said, that's right, Dave, you get me, right? And to pause versus him saying, this is how I'm feeling. And I say, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. In the future, I'm going to make sure we say please and thank you. And I don't ever want you to feel that way again. And just like slow down and show the person sincerely, I really am hearing you. Repeat it back, right? These are what some of these labels and mirrors, and sometimes even a mislabel. It sounds like we're not being responsive at all to your needs. No, it's not that. No, you guys are responsive. It's just the way you're responding. Sometimes I feel this way, and you can unpack that a little bit more. So kind of a long answer, but to a great question of what do the best salespeople do? They're curious. They really are great listeners. They really take the time to fully understand so they could repeat back to the customer. Let me see if I can, would you mind if I summarize really quickly your goals, your initiatives, what you've been tasked with, and what your challenges are? And you can explain it back to them and they go, that's right. Yes, finally someone who gets me.
Right.
Great.
I'm a big fan of the asking, like specifically the context within their challenges. And the goal, I think the goal, and you hear this in value selling and all these, the goal is to get it like, what's the root cause? Like, what is this really damaging? We need better, better efficiencies, better IT operations. Okay. Unpack that a little bit. Like, why? Like, did something happen? What happened? And you go back far enough, and you find that maybe they got hit with a virus, with ransomware, and you're like, that's what happened, right? And because of that, you've got these other reasons. So if you go to attack one, you've got to get it down to the root cause almost. You're not going to do that without asking the right questions.
Right. And asking those follow-up, right? How does, this might sound silly, this is a little basic, bear with me, but So how would another ransomware attack affect your business? Right? It sounds simple, and it is, but a customer could say, well, it wouldn't be that bad. We've got measures in place, and maybe that's true. The answer might be, Xavier, it would cripple us. Right? We barely made it through the last time. If that happens again, we're done. I'm certainly done. I'm updating my resume, right, as the CISO or whatever. So that, again, that's the power of some of those calibrated questions of how would this impact you, or what would happen. Even just understanding what happens if you move forward with the solution. What happens if you don't? Right? Maybe nothing will happen. What happens if you're status quo, business as usual?
Right. They seem like benign questions, but they really open up a lot. And if you